Welcome into the Locked On Knicks podcast. Gavin, Schall, Alex Wolfe, and you'll all be happy to hear we are once again joined by Albert Ghim and Corey Tuluba, the dynamic duo behind the Draftdaq, that's Draftdaq podcast, all part of the No Ceilings NBA team. And Alex, what are we getting into in part two of this Knicks draft conversation?
Well, we're finishing up some mailbag questions that we got from all of our lovely listeners, like ranking the current young Knicks core in the middle of this draft and figuring out where they would slot in. We talk about the double draft and also whether the Knicks should start looking at consolidating their picks, even if it's to move up in this coming draft, and then talk about how the Knicks should approach this draft. So there's a lot of various big picture sort of draft things to talk about in this episode. Coming up right now on Locked On Knicks.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, and we want to thank you for making Locked On Knicks your first listen today and every day. We are now available on all platforms, including on YouTube. And who's talking to you? I am Gavin Schall, a play-by-play broadcaster getting ready to cover all the lacrosse playoffs on Long Island, the New York State Championships. So that'll be a whole lot of fun. You can check out the Varsity Media Sports Network and the NFHS Network for that coverage. He is Alex Wolfe, editor-in-chief of The Strickland, the greatest Knicks website out there. You can check them out on social media at thestrick.land. A whole lot of great draft content on there and a whole lot of great draft content about to be on here as we're joined once again by Albert Ghim and Corey Tuluba. I won't hold us up any longer. Let's get into it right now on Locked On Knicks. You are Locked On Knicks, and as promised, we are joined once again by Albert Ghim and Corey Tuluba of No Ceilings NBA and the Draftdaq podcast. Did a fantastic episode with them the other day, in case you guys missed it, breaking down five of our favorites, and it turned out five of their favorite potential Knick draft prospects, ranking all of them: Shaedon Sharpe, Malachi Branham, a bunch of others. Really fun conversation today. We're zooming out a little bit. We're going big picture. And we're hitting a whole bunch of different things. This first question was, we got about 30 for this mailbag. This might have been my single favorite one. I thought it was so interesting. It came from, oh man, I should have read the name.
No, fun story, Gavin.
Go ahead.
I've seen a question from this user before. If you squint just right, apparently it looks like Knicks, even though it's written like Knicks. But like, apparently the Knicks did something where they put out like text like that. I forgot this, but like,
sure,
it looks like Knicks if you squint your eyes just right.
So
but
I'm
it's
just gonna
actually spelled like Ick.
All right, so Ick wants to know at Cal, not Kale. Could you do a mock draft of prospects, but include all the Knicks players on rookie contracts, including Mitch and Rokas? Would RJ go number one? Obviously, fit with the team isn't a consideration. Just ranking the prospects versus current Knicks in draft form. So I'll give you guys my brief primer on this and give you a second to think about it, because it took me a few minutes. And I tried to find a middle ground between my inherent Knicks bias and how I thought teams would actually view these guys. I leaned a little bit more towards my inherent Knicks bias, but my list was Chet, and top four is relative, but Chet, Jabari, Shaedon Sharpe, Banchero. Then I had RJ. Then I had Jaden Ivey. Then I had, and this is probably higher than I think teams would actually have him. This is where I had him. I had Emmanuel quickly in there. Then Griffin, then Murray, then Mathurin, then maybe again higher than teams would have him. Obi Toppin, Jalen Duren, Quentin Grimes, Branham, Eason, Johnny Davis, Sochan or something else. And then Mitchell Robinson, then Jericho Sims. And then I just put in my notes, Rokas maybe somewhere like 18, Deuce McBride maybe somewhere like 22. It's all about fun with this, guys, but I'll throw it to you first, Corey. Where would you put the Knicks' young prospects if they were in this draft today with everything we know about them
now? So I had RJ 4, and I had Chet, Jabari, and then RJ. Then I had Ivy, Sharpe, Keegan, Murray, AJ Griffin, Mathurin, Dyson Daniels, Jalen Duren, Obi Toppin. And from there, my computer died, so my list was on my phone. So I'm kind of freestyling off there because we're filming on my phone now. But I would probably have Quickly below Grimes. So I have Grimes ahead of Quickly. I would probably have Grimes somewhere around like maybe 17, somewhere around like the Ochai Agbaji range. Quickly, I would probably have a few spots below, somewhere in the 20s. Deuce, I would have right below that. Rokas, depending on his contract situation, a few spots below that, and then Sims probably somewhere in the second round.
Albert, what about you? Where are you sitting on this one?
So for me, I really had to hear you guys do this first because I didn't know if we were like ranking them as like NBA pros or when they were in college. So this gives me good insight. So okay, I think I'm ready.
Yeah, go for it.
We're just making it up as we go, but I'm glad that you got something out of this first two.
It's a great question, but it's an insane question. So.
Yeah, it is.
It is. It's a good one.
My brain just doesn't work like this, but it's fine. I'm here as a guest, so I got to try my best. Here we go. I actually had RJ fifth, which is pretty controversial, I think, and it may just be because I'm irrationally high on Johnny Davis right now. But it's okay. Like if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. You guys can kill me on Twitter. It's fine. I have Chet 1, Jabari 2, Paolo 3, Johnny Davis 4, and then I have RJ after that. I might be dead wrong on that. Now, as I'm saying it, I kind of want to have RJ 4, but I'm going to stick to my guns here, okay? I'm going to put RJ 5th. And then for Toppin, I actually have Toppin in like the 14, 15 range. I think I have him like right before Patrick Baldwin Jr. And then I'm actually 100% with Corey. I had Grimes ahead of Quickly. Now, that's not an indictment against Quickly. All you Quickly fans out there, Quickly hide. Don't come for my head now. I love Quickly just as much as any other Knicks fan. I just feel like, once again, modern NBA, I feel like Grimes is going to offer us so much defensively, and offensively, we've seen he's an absolute sniper from three. So I like that versatility still with Grimes. And so I'd have Grimes somewhere around like the Baldwin, Sohan, Agbaji, Liddell area. And then for Quickly, have him like in the late 20s, I think, or early 20s, somewhere in that 20s range. Rokas and Sims, I have second round grades on, even in this draft. Is kind of how I have it. So yeah, not too different from what you guys said, but yeah, maybe I have Davis a little too high, maybe not. Maybe I'm a genius, not sure.
Only time will tell, particularly if he falls to the Knicks at pick 11. That was one guy we didn't talk about in the last show that I feel like maybe thanks to the NCAA tournament, he might be one of those guys that gets hurt by the NCAA tournament based off what his team did. I think we're sort of seeing that with Ty Washington a bit too, with how mock drafts at least are shaking down leading up to the draft here. My list for this, I think I'm probably at, I think Chet's number one. I think I've got a virtual tie between Banchero and RJ for number two. And then I've got Jabari number four, technically speaking, if they're tied for number two. The reason being, like, Jabari has some great skills, but I've been reading up on him more lately and like watching more, and I am starting to get a little, I don't know if concerned is the right word. I mean, he shows flashes where it seems like he can kind of dribble, but his dribble game is not very tight. He's
not tight at all.
It's not tight at all. Yeah. I mean, there's like one or two flashes where you see him pull like a behind the back dribble and, in transition or something. And you're like, woo, cool. But then other than that, like, it's pretty rough, and like RJ and Banchero are sort of similar. The reason I have them the same is that, like, I sort of feel like the book on RJ right now is pretty similar to the book on Banchero, like, or at least, especially like their college resumes were pretty similar. Like established scores. Yeah, like established scores, they could put up 20 points per game on Duke.
Questionable jumper.
Yeah, a little bit questionable jumper, but like all kinds of craft and moves, and they've been at the top of their class for so long that you just kind of, and they seem like they have the work ethic. You kind of just know that they're not going to fail. So I think I've got those two on equal footing, tied for number two. I've got Jabari lower than that because I think, especially for a guy his size, it's a little concerning that like he's so bad on the inside and he doesn't really have much of like a dribble game to make up for it. Plus, he's not really like a rim protector either. So it's like, where you at here? Like, you got the shooting, but what else is there? Like, I understand there's a great template for something, but I feel like there's more established skill with Paolo and RJ. Then I would probably go Ivy and Sharpe, who I think I have roughly on the same level right now. Then like Keegan Murray. I think I would probably put. I mean, I'm not gonna try to assign specific numbers, but I would probably put IQ for me, and maybe I'm buying to maybe like Gavin, I'm putting the Homer glasses on a little too much.
Yeah, this is the big difference between us and you guys. Is we're like, I mean, and to your point, you guys might love quickly and say, no, but this is reasonable. And we're like, I think he'd be a top 10 pick in this. Right?
Yeah, like I would probably lump him in the general grouping of like Benedict Mathurin, Johnny Davis, Dyson Daniels, who I love, obviously, that I talked about in the last episode. Guys of that general ilk, like right around where the Knicks pick actually is going to be. I would put IQ around there. Just based off, I mean, I think that what he showed towards the end of the season, as far as his increased ability to run the point and make good decisions and stuff like that, I think that's starting to make him rise for me in that respect. Obi, I'd probably have in the same general range as like Tari Eason, who we talked about last episode as well, around like 15. Pretty similar player. You know, I think there's a good chance that if Obi becomes a starter, that maybe he straight up is like a 20-point per game scorer, like right away. Like if they deal Randall, maybe that's the case. But draft age, you know, or current age now, I mean, by the time you're giving Obi a second contract, he's going to be like 27 years old. So he better be in his prime by the time his rookie deal is up, basically. So that's still a concern, you know, which is why I still put him there. Then Grimes, I would have probably, I guess, in that same general conversation, definitely higher than where he actually got drafted at 25. So probably around like the 18 to 20 pick. Maybe that's with Branham, although Branham seems to be moving up. You know, maybe that's with Sohan. I don't know. I mean, just that general range, because this draft's so topsy-turvy, I don't even know who's going to make it to 20. And then like Mitchell Robinson, Jericho Sims, I would have maybe sneak in towards the end of the first round. Rokas, I would probably have. He based off how well he played in Europe this year, and some of the video I've seen of that, maybe he sneaks in like pick 29, moves himself up like 3-4 spots from last year. And then Deuce, I would still probably have somewhere general second round. But I do think Jericho showed quite a bit. I mean, if nothing else, he moves up to early second round instead of like very end of the second round, like almost last pick in the draft for me, because he showed a lot as far as like he was an older rookie, you know, and a 4-year guy in college, but I still people thought that he was going to be way more raw than he actually was. And he had really established screen setting ability. He, despite being a super vertical athlete, he wasn't necessarily the most like vertical, like rim protector, but he was really good at putting his body in the right place to contest shots. Very switchy, was able to like stick with pretty much anybody they got switched onto, which is really useful. And obviously like a nuclear lob threat, like just like dropping an atomic bomb on the hoop every time that you throw it anywhere near it, which is sort of the same for Mitchell Robinson too. So, but yeah, I think that's where I'm at. So,
all right, guys, we'll be back in just a sec, talking about the double draft and also getting into some interesting hypotheticals on what the Knicks draft strategy should be next year. Before we get into all that, I need to tell you about the thing that maybe the number one thing that has most changed my life in 2022, and that is the introduction of AG1. I use it literally every day. I started taking it because, you know, I just wanted a little bit more focus. I wanted to feel a little bit better on a day-to-day basis. And in the past, I was a lunatic. I was buying like 20 supplements a month, just trying to keep up with all the various demands that my body was putting on me. And then I found one that combined just about everything I needed, and that was AG1. So what is this stuff? With one delicious scoop of AG1, you're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. This special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, recovery, focus, and aging, all the things. I love to take it before a broadcast. It just gives me that clear focus and that little boost of energy I need to perform my best. And there's so many good things about it. Tons of people take some kind of multivitamin, but it's important to choose the right one. You want one with high quality ingredients that your body actually absorbs instead of just flushing out. AG1 is a small microhabitat with big benefits. It's the one thing you can do every single day to take care of yourself. Plus, they give you some vitamin D in there as well. And you can feel good about buying from Athletic Greens because they have over 7,000 5-star reviews. And they're also a climate neutral company. I know that's important to me. So right now it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. It's just 1 scoop and a cup of water every day. That's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NBA Network. Again, that is athleticgreens.com/NBA Network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance.
I think we can move to our next question now, which this one I'm going to throw to you guys probably because you might know better than me as far as what's going on here. This comes from Jake Andrews at NY Critics on Twitter. Shout out to Jake. Always ask questions, both for this pod and my other mailbag show that I do for the Strickland. But Jake says, here's a dumb question. Jake, there are no dumb questions, only dumb answers. But a few years ago, I kept hearing about how teams, particularly the Knicks, were gearing up for the, quote, double draft. Is that still something you think the organization is eyeing? Follow-up, do you think the Knicks are better served unloading picks at this point? So maybe the first part maybe deserves like a little less explanation if we have like a definitive answer. But the double draft was allegedly potentially going to be the 2023 draft, from what I understand, but that's just been sort of pushed back. Corey or Albert, have you guys been keeping up with that saga to know like what's going on there?
Yeah, right now it's not going on.
Mm-hmm.
So
we should probably explain what the double draft is. That would be when high school players will be kind of eligible for the draft again.
Right.
It sounds like a mythical creature when you just throw it
out. Yeah. Right now it'll stay a mythical thing. Woj reported it a couple of years ago. Part of me thinks that COVID had a little bit something to do with it, but then the other thing is one of the big hangups, I guess, was like NBA teams wanted the high school players' medicals, and that's something that the agents and the Players Association doesn't want to concede. It looks like it won't get brought up again, even as an idea, until the CBA expires, I believe in 2025. Yeah. And then if you look at how the G League or the NBA is investing in the G League Ignite program, the Overtime Elite program at the high school level has been a thing that I think is going to continue to grow. Like all these outside things, kids going to the NBL. Like I don't know if it's necessarily as much of like we need to get high school kids paid early because now there's so many other avenues for it to happen. And I think those are going to continue to grow. So I wouldn't expect for it to be something that comes up at least for another few years.
Yeah. And to make it, like also there's the whole NCAA players being able to use their likeness now too, which I think
absolutely
squashed that a little bit too. Like mostly it was a money thing. Like it was like, why are you going to hold these kids back from being able to make money? You know, when like a torn ACL in college could potentially cost them millions of dollars. Now it's a little less so, especially because, like you said, now the NBA even has their own funnel program. So I think that basically answers the double draft part of things here. So that, you know, that was even when the Knicks made the Porzingis trade. That was even something that was being talked about quite a bit of like, oh, they just got another pick for the double draft. That's going to be like having a top 10 pick, you know, not so much anymore. But I'll throw it to you, Albert, the second part here as the resident Knicks fan out of the two guests on the panel here. Do you think the Knicks are better served unloading picks at this point? They have, you know, it depends on what they unload it for, right? So context is important, but you know, they have, I mean, really only one extra first round pick at this point, which is the Dallas pick next year, which is top 10 protected. So 2 picks in that draft. Plus, I think they have like 3 or 4 second round picks next year. I mean, there's definitely a surplus next year that needs to be moved somewhere or another because we've seen with this front office, they don't make more than 2, maybe 3 picks in a draft generally. Or this past draft was an exception, but obviously they stashed Rokas, and I don't think they ever expected that Jericho Sims would be contributing this past year, but he did on a 2-way contract. But like, I don't know. I think there's a good case to be made for consolidating. I don't know how, But I'm curious what your thoughts are with that. And or do you think maybe even if we're projecting forward a little bit, the next year's draft is so good that you wouldn't want to touch that pick and just make 2 selections because next year's draft projects to be that good?
I think, okay, so for me, I read this question, you sent it to me earlier. I did a lot of thinking. I feel like it really depends. As you mentioned, I think the cost benefit analysis stuff is really, really important. Who's out there, who's on the market. I mean, we see all kinds of crazy rumors on Twitter, whether people are throwing Zion's name out there or Donovan Mitchell, or the list goes on and on, right? I think first off, I have a lot of confidence in our front office. I think these guys are really, really good, and I think they're going to do a great job of looking into what's out there first. And for me, I think even this past season, right? You look at the outrage on Knicks Twitter and people freaking out like, "Hey, this was the number four seed in the East last year. You know, we should be so much better." Blah blah blah. I saw a regression coming. I was almost expecting it. You know, we brought in Kemba, and we knew what Kemba's medical history was like. We lost Reggie Bullock. I know I've already mentioned that before, but that was a big loss for us. Like I really believe that hurt us a lot. And then we brought in Evan Fournier, and Fournier, for all his shot making, and he broke the Knicks record for most threes in the season. Congrats. He also has like huge warts to his game as well, right? So if we're thinking about the future, I don't know. Like I'm not in a super rush, like some crazy rush to make sure that the Knicks are like it really is difficult to kind of gauge where this Knicks team is at and how the front office feels about this team, but we have a good young nucleus. So when we're looking at this year's draft, right? We have a first round pick. I don't know what our second round situation is. I think we only have one, right? So for me, I would much rather us just grab the best player available and worry about those later picks later. Once again, it depends on the market out there, but let's say the Knicks end up with the 12th pick in the draft. As we mentioned on the last episode, I think there's going to be a really nice selection of wings that are going to be there that I think could help the Knicks from day one. Now, will Tibbs make that happen and have them contribute from day one? I'm not sure. But look, Alex, you love Dyson Daniels. Imagine Dyson Daniels is there at number 12, and the Knicks grab Dyson Daniels. And we're talking about a really interesting piece there that'll be a part of the Knicks' future and the immediate success as well, I believe. So when it comes to all these draft picks, I really do think it comes down to, once again, the market that's out there. And if there is no real market for us to grab anybody, I'm not really interested in throwing 3, 4 picks to Utah to go grab Rudy Gobert. That's just not, I'm not very interested in that. So if it is a Donovan Mitchell, even with Donovan Mitchell, guys, where is his stock now after that playoff performance? We have to ask that question, right? So for me, I think they should just grab the best player available on their board and worry about those future picks later, which
If
may not be that exciting of an answer.
All right, we'll be right back in to talk the Knicks draft strategy in this coming draft, which we sort of alluded to already, but we'll kind of tie that up nicely in a bow as far as how the Knicks should approach this draft. But I got to let you guys know today's episode is brought to you by Built Bar, and summer is coming. And with summer, you're going to need some food on the go. Built Bars are the perfect snack to take with you on family vacations. You throw them in your bags and your kids' backpacks. Make sure everyone has a bar so you're fueled for your summer adventures. I know I once made the mistake of going during the summer and hiking Catterskill Falls in upstate New York. And my wife and I were hiking it for the first time and didn't realize how big of a hike it was, at least for what we were trying to do, which was kind of explore the whole area. We didn't bring any snacks with us, so we hiked for like 5 hours with no snacks. It was miserable. Our stomachs were growling a ton. We went back and did it again, and I brought Built Bars, and they were perfect. It was like the perfect pick-me-up for in the middle of a hike. So definitely bring some with you for your summer activities. And the best part is that it's much better than grabbing like a Snickers bar or something, or your favorite, candy bar, because Built Bars have just 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, and 4 grams of net carbs, along with 17 whopping grams of protein to get you through your activity-filled summer. So as the weather gets warmer, make sure to grab some Built Bars to make sure that you're replenished and that you're not like me and almost end up falling off the edge of the Catterskill Mountains because you're too fatigued because you ain't bringing any snacks with you on a hike. So go to built.com and get some Built Bars for yourself. And when you do, use promo code LOCKED15 and you can get 15% off your order. Again, use promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. If I may, I'm going to throw I want to throw out a quick scenario that just came to my mind out to all three of you guys, because I'm really I think this sort of is a different spirit of this question, right? Because I think obviously, star trades are what we usually think about with those picks, right? But
Yeah.
let's say whoever the Knicks are the most sold on out of these two players falls to like pick number 5. Let's say, or actually, well, one of them is definitely going to be there at 5. Let's say 6, pick 6. All right, because I think that would be more realistic. So maybe like Keegan Murray jumps one of these two guys and they become available at 6, right? You have Shaedon Sharpe and Jaden Ivey, both available at pick 6. And whatever team is there says, we'll do pick 11 plus the Dallas pick next year for pick 6. And you can have Shaedon Sharpe or Jaden Ivey over, say, Dyson Daniels or, whoever falls, like Mathurin or something like that. Or, someone would fall in this scenario probably because like Sharpe is jumping up there. But where do you guys stand on that? Gavin, it's been a second, so I'll throw it to you and then you could throw it to the guests with this scenario. But how do you think about that?
Yeah, I think if you're the Knicks, I like the idea of taking a little bit of a swing just because they currently have 7 guys on rookie contracts and they do have that depth and the case for them making the pick and making the Dallas pick is, to Albert's point, this front office, if nothing else, has proven to be exceptionally good at drafting. Getting Emmanuel quickly and Quentin Grimes in back-to-back years at 25, I think is just going to age exceptionally well and already looks very, very good. Jericho Sims, one of the better, I think, like the best guy picked at 58 in the last decade. One of the best guys taken with the last 5 to 10 picks in the draft in recent memory. Like it's pretty amazing to get a rotation player in that spot. All that is to say, to some extent, you want as many bites at the apple as possible. But no matter how good you are at drafting, obviously there is a weight. And the higher you're picking, the more likely you are to get a star. And I think at this point, the Knicks, that's the reason we're talking about Donovan Mitchell, the reason we're talking about Zion Williamson. And I keep saying it, like with the position the Knicks are in, you're never going to get the perfect guy, right? Like LeBron James at age 18 isn't walking through that door. There's going to be warts in any star that you get. And that's true with any draft pick too. Like Shaedon Sharpe, we were just talking about last podcast, like he has this incredibly deep bag already. He's super smooth. He's a high flyer, but none of his warts got to be exposed by the college game. Jaden Ivey, an insane athlete, but he certainly has very real questions about how he translates to the NBA. But that being said, I think you need that higher ceiling option if you are the New York Knicks, as much as a Dyson Daniels or a Benedict Mathurin would fit in really well. And I think could lead to a good team down the road. Like the analogy I keep making for these Knicks is the Grizzlies. Like they're still looking for their Ja Morant. And maybe RJ emerges as that type of talent. Maybe Emmanuel quickly surprises us all and has a much higher ceiling than even I expect him to. But they don't have a dude with that potential quite yet. Some people might disagree with me and think RJ is that guy. But I would rather move up to 6 and take that swing. But Albert, Corey, I'll throw it to you first, Corey. What do you think about that scenario?
So I would do Sharpe in a blink of an eye. Like I probably wouldn't hesitate. And I love Jaden Ivey. Like Jaden Ivey is 4 on my board. I would have to think about that one. And this is something that I plan on writing about, where you get to this like best talent available versus fit kind of thing. And I think there's more of an intersection there than people like to think about. Like Jaden Ivey, like to succeed at the next level, and why people value him so highly is because I think teams or analysts are looking at him as like a guy you can run everything through, like give him the ball, which is not a role he had in college. Like he very much was an off-ball guy playing off the 2 bigs at Purdue. So it's like his explosion is going to come at the expense of him being, again, like in this Ja Morant type on-ball role. Is that what he's going to get with the Knicks? Like, to me, like RJ has proven enough that like Tibbs is going to trust him to continuously take on more of a role as a ball handler in the next couple of years. I think quickly, whether he's, a starting point guard long-term or like this awesome spark plug off the bench, is a guy who, of course, he can play without the ball in his hands because he's an amazing shooter, but like is going to have the ball in his hands a little bit. You have all these other point guards that the Knicks have drafted, like Rokas is overseas. You have Deuce. There's so many, and obviously, like if you take the talent, like don't worry about those other guys, right? Like you can move those for other assets or whatnot. But to me, like with Jaden Ivey, the question is this the kind of roster that you're going to maximize it? are the Knicks in the current iteration with like Julius Randle on the floor and Mitchell Robinson going to give him enough space to operate to where he's going to be able to have this like parade to the paint? I don't know. And again, eventually you probably want to move on from Randle. We'll see what happens with Mitchell Robinson this summer. I would hesitate. Ultimately, I would lean yes for Jaden Ivey as well. But it's definitely something that like I would have a very long meeting weighing the pros and cons of taking them and how we have to operate with the roster moving forward.
Albert, where are you staying with this?
See, okay, that's why I'm not an NBA GM, because when you guys talked about consolidating picks, all I thought about was like for a superstar or something. But this is a really interesting scenario. So shouts to you, Alex. But for me, I think with Sharpe, there's no doubt. Like Sharpe is the type of guy that that's literally a home run swing there, because he has. Yeah, Sharpe is just so. I said it on the last pod. He's so beautiful to watch, and I just feel like he's going to be insane. Could be wrong though. I've been wrong before. But here's the thing, and as Corey was talking, I was thinking about this. I think Corey, ultimately, the point that you're trying to make is you wonder if the Knicks have the infrastructure in terms of talent and fit for a guy like Ivy to like fully blossom into what we think, like theoretically, what Ivy is
Yeah,
going to
correct.
be. Is this the situation for him to become that? And so with that question in mind, I think the cascading or the following question that came to me from that is, if that's the case, maybe this is one of the situations where you pass on a guy like Ivy, stand pat where you are. Like, okay, let's say that you mentioned the trade is for like the sixth pick in the draft. Sharpe is probably gone by then in my own theoretical world, and Ivy sitting there at 6. We have the opportunity to trade for him. My thing is, why not stand pat where we are, continue to build a roster that makes sense with a lead guard type like a John Morant that you're talking about? So, Alex, like, let's say we get a Dyson Daniels or a Malachi Branham or a Tari Eason or whoever, right? Bennett Mathurin. We grab one of these guys, a modern, versatile 3-and-D or 3-and-D plus wing, right? To play with the future guard of next year, whoever that's going to be, right? Now, of course, next year may not have a Jaden Ivey or whatever, but my thing is, I'm actually really on board with what Corey said. I still think that this Knicks team is not one or two pieces away from being a title contending team. I think there's still a lot of the foundation that needs to be built out. And I feel like a guy like Daniels, as I mentioned before, a Ron Harper type, 6'8", can play defense and create. He's going to be able to pass the ball. He's even more than a connector, I think, with his passing. So you add a guy like that with quickly and maybe his limitations as a playmaker, and RJ with his playmaking abilities, then you're building a really solid foundation to then bring in an awesome lead guard, is what I'm thinking. So I would be very okay with the Knicks just standing pat at 11 or 12 and grabbing one of these versatile wings instead.
Yeah, I kind of bounce back and forth. I was thinking about this scenario because I came up with it, and then I was thinking about it as I was listening to you guys answer. I think I'm definitely on board for Sharpe because I see the potential there. It's like, I don't know how you don't take a swing on a guy like that if you get a chance, especially pick 6, all for the cost of pick 11 plus probably like pick 22 next year or something. I mean, the Mavericks are trending upwards right now, not treading water. So,
Right.
if things go the way that it seems like they're going, they might even be a higher playoff seed next year. So who knows? They might be the 25th pick next year, which would maybe be the sweet spot. Maybe that's the place that you always want the Knicks to pick. But I think for Sharpe, I'm doing that 100 times out of 100. For Ivy, you guys maybe started talking me out of it a little bit, but I think I would still probably do it. I think that Ivy would only fall thanks to like some circumstances, like Sharpe declaring, and shaking the order up, then all of a sudden a guy like Ivy becomes more available, and then maybe whoever's at pick 5, like maybe it's the Magic or something, who are already like, no, we just drafted Jalen Suggs last year, like we don't need another Jalen Suggs, so we're gonna pass just for that reason. So like what you were talking about, Corey, about like sometimes you go BPA, sometimes you do have to take fit into account. Like with Jalen Suggs on the roster, can Jaden Ivey develop here? Like, no, probably not. So even if on a raw talent perspective, you might be higher than like Keegan Murray on our board, like we're going to take Keegan Murray because he fits better into what we're trying to do right now. So then if he becomes available, then I'm looking at it like, I mean, this is a guy that we've talked to some people that have said they've got him as high as like 3 or 2 potentially even on their board, because he's the only guy of like his mold in this draft. The mega burner fast guard that just rips through everything. And maybe Sharpe is that too, actually. But that's why Sharpe would be jumping him in this scenario. I think I would pull the trigger, because I'm kind of the belief now that, like, especially as it pertains to next year, the Knicks can't make all those picks. So if they don't foresee a star trade on the horizon within the next like 9 months or whatever, like until next trade deadline, then why not take that swing? Especially if like Walt Perrin, who's drafted quickly in Grimes at pick 25, we took Obi Toppin, and that actually looks really good now, even though we panned that pick at the time, who's discovered Jericho Sims and Deuce McBride and Rokas and all these guys in the draft. If he's coming to you and saying like, yeah, trade up for Jaden Ivey, I'd be like, done, finished. Like, that's it. That's a good enough endorsement for me. But I think we can move to our final question here. Did you guys have any rebuttals to that before we move on from that scenario?
I'll just say real quick, I think on Jaden Ivey, because I'm similar to you guys, I'm a lot higher on Sharpe. Like, I just think the Knicks are one of maybe the least athletic team in terms of their guards and wings in the NBA. Like, they could just use that injection of juice. So that would swing it a little bit for me. But yeah, Alex, go ahead on the final question, which I think now we almost have to narrow in scope a little bit, because there's a lot of overlap with what we were just talking about.
Yeah. Well, hey, you know what? It kind of just works as a natural continuation of the conversation. So our final question comes from another frequent question asker here, Bugsy Sig at Bugsy Sig on Twitter. Given the quote unquote flat draft after pick 4-5 this year, if you were drafting for the Knicks, which strategy would you employ and why? 1, best player available, regardless of position or need. 2, address the perceived need for a point guard. Or 3, draft an insurance big should Mitchell Robinson walk or Randall get traded. Or 4, the highest upside. So I'm kind of curious where you guys are at on this. You know what, Corey, you sort of got into this topic a little bit, so I'll let you just kind of keep continuing on your train of thought there as far as this question.
Yeah. So again, a lot of it I feel like you need to know what the front office is thinking, because I think the big in this scenario that I would consider is Jalen Duren.
Mm-hmm.
But am I taking Jalen Duren if Mitchell Robinson is going to be re-upped, and then Taj Gibson's probably still going to be playing, 15 to 20 minutes a night, a lot of the nights, like
the immortal man,
who is half of my Jabari Smith comp, Taj Gibson. So for the big, I wouldn't be looking for a replacement. The other thing is, like, drafting a big, like, the Knicks aren't, I think, in the position that, like, if they want to get back in the playoffs, like, a rookie big man is not the way to go about it. And Tibbs wants to get back to the playoffs. So I don't know about the Duren or Mark Williams or anything like that. Dyson Daniels kind of solves a lot of those issues, again, because he could kind of fit into the versatility. He might be best player available, and he also can run a little bit of point guard. So that might be an easy way out of the larger question. But to me, in that flat area, just get modern. That's my goal, is to get guys who are going to be able to play multiple positions and just, add to a depth that they could play next to, like the 4 through 7 guys on the Knicks roster. Like, just, I need them to be able to fit all around the floor. And if I look at a playoff context, because I think that you need to look at the future of what the playoffs are going to be like, can they fit into that, which is switchable, knocking down open shots and making smart passes when the ball swings their way. That's what I'm looking for. And there are a number of those guys in the Knicks range.
Albert, what are your thoughts on all that?
I mean, that's the problem with us. We've been critiqued a lot of being a pod where we agree too much. Corey literally couldn't have said it better. I agree with so much of what he said, like, deep in my core, because look, this Knicks team, it's, as Corey mentioned on the last pod, we have a lot of like 1 position, 2 position guys. We need versatility. And I'm not saying like the Toronto Raptors are the end all be all in terms of team building philosophy. But look at the NBA again, guys. Like, look at these rosters, look at these teams. You want, of course, your star players, but around those star players, you want guys who can do all kinds of things. The more versatile they are, the more interesting and intriguing they become to your team, especially defensively. You're looking for guys like every time you talk about like a draft prospect, whether it's like, okay, guys, you talk about any of these center prospects, every time you're bringing them, you see these guys on Twitter or wherever bringing them down. The question is, can they guard Giannis? Is the question, right? And so you want guys who can guard multiple positions and ultimately be able to guard guys like Giannis or whatever. But I mean, who the hell can guard Giannis? Look at the Celtics. They're struggling, man. They have all these wings. They have all these bigs that are thrown at them, and Giannis is having his way. But ultimately, you want more versatility. And this Knicks team, we need more versatility for sure. And at the same time, I also don't think we should grab like a big at all, whether it's a center or a four. Like, do we not have enough with Randall and Toppin, or do we need another four to that mix? I'm not sure how you guys feel about. I mean, is this like an Oakley Mason situation, and we want another? I have no idea. I would say that's wrong. I want more wings on this team. It's as simple as that. And Corey and I have talked about that a lot when talking about the Knicks. They need more wings. And this is not the class to go searching for your starting point guard unless you're going to grab Ivy. After Ivy, I really don't think there is a starting point guard. So yeah, I just want more wings.
All right. Yeah, go ahead, Alex.
I was just gonna say, to weigh my 2 cents. I totally agree. I don't think this is the class to go for a point guard, and we've talked about that on a number of shows because everybody mocks like Ty Washington to the Knicks, and it's become like a meme at this point. But it's like that feels like a reach when there's a lot of really quality wing talent hanging out to be taken.
Big time.
So I'm not about it. So I would probably go. I don't know. I mean, I would say out of these options that were presented, like BPA and highest upside are sort of similar in a lot of ways. So I would just go with, if they stick at 11, just go with whichever player you think is going to your point, Corey, like fit well with what you're trying to do, but then also just sort of the best player, so strike a balance there. Like if you have,
Yes.
if you have, I don't know, I'm trying to think like Johnny Davis, right? Like you do, Albert, you have Johnny Davis really high on your board. Like, let's say that Walt Perrin has Johnny Davis mad high on his board too, and he gets to pick 11, and then you have between him and Dyson Daniels, and it's like, well, I could reasonably see Dyson Daniels being like a better like fit for what the team needs, but Johnny Davis definitely has more like upside. Then in that case, I'd be like, well, weigh one versus the other. But if you think that upside is so high with Davis that, it makes him that much better than a better fit like a Dyson Daniels, then go for Johnny Davis. So that's kind of where I'm at as far as draft strategy. But Gavin, I'll throw it to you to take us home.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have a lot to add. I'm on the same page as all you guys. I mean, the vision I have for this team is a whole bunch of flexible big wings around RJ Barrett, and this draft again, it doesn't have a lot of point guards. It has a lot of those guys, and I think the Knicks would be smart to head in that direction. But that'll be it for our 2-part mailbag, guys. I know I speak for Alex in saying it was an absolute pleasure, and I hadn't heard the podcast before. I'm excited to go and listen to it just about every day because you guys are both apps. I mean, I just had a blast talking to you guys, and I, as always, learned a whole lot. And I'm gonna put you guys in an awkward position once again to promote yourselves. Let everyone know where they can find you. Let everyone know all the different things you guys do in covering the NBA draft.
Hey guys, thank you so much for having us. This was, as much our pleasure. So really, really had a good time. I always love talking Knicks basketball. It's one of my favorite things about the draft process. You can find me on Twitter at Corey Tuluba, the YouTube NBA Draft Dude, and the Draftdaq NBA Draft Podcast, where we break down one prospect an episode. We talk about their draft stock and where it was the beginning of the cycle versus where it is now. And then NoCeilingsNBA.com is where all the written work is for the No Ceilings team. And if you subscribe, which is free, you will get content delivered directly to your inbox Monday through Friday and sometimes Sunday.
All right. And guys, just one reminder for everyone listening, that's Draftdaq podcast to go check that out. But for Alex, Albert, Corey, I'm Gavin. Appreciate you guys tuning in for this monster two-parter. We will certainly have both of them back either before the draft or right after the draft when we actually get to see what the Knicks do. But until next time, peace out, and we'll talk to you all soon.